Everyone, and welcome to Fortinet Quantum Cybersecurity webinar. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Amol Bhandarkar, and on behalf of Fortinet, it's my privilege to have you all for this conversation. And I believe this is one of the most consequential one in cybersecurity right now. Let me start with this number 2034. That's the Gartner's projection when the quantum computing is going to break virtually all the cryptographic standards. Gartner has highlighted this post-quantum cryptography as one of the top strategic technology trend, warning that the quantum computers will break all the cryptographic within a decade. Now that's sounds like a future, but threat is already here today. And threat actors, often state-sponsored, are already executing what's known as a harvest now, decrypt later attack. They're exfiltrating your encrypted data and storing it and waiting for quantum capabilities to unlock it. For the organizations who deal with this data, financial record, patient history, intellectual properties, government communication, your data that's encrypted right now may be compromised in somebody else's data store. India's regulatory landscape also is tightening very fast. DPDP Act, which is already operationalized in 2025, mandates a reasonable security safeguards and accountability for data breaches. Regulators like RBI, SEBI, IRDAI impose additional stricter cybersecurity obligations on financial services. Now, as a country's framework are collectively establishing a robust compliance architecture for current threats, they remain largely technologically neutral when it is in case of explicit contemplation of quantum-induced vulnerabilities, which means there is a gap between a regulatory intent and a quantum readiness that falls on the organization like yours to proactively, closely monitor it. So regulators are already shifting the Q-day estimates into the mid-2030s window, which is more tighter deadlines for us. At Fortinet, we have been building this for this particular moment, whereas our 40OS is supporting NIST-approved PQCs, QKDs, integration, FIPS compliances, hybrid mode, and algorithm stacking, which will allow the organizations like you to transition into a quantum-safe encryption at your own pace without any overheads or performance compromise. In the next 1 hour, Nitish, who is our subject matter expert for quantum computing, will walk you through a threat landscape, a regulatory imperative specifics to a vertical, and a practical roadmap to become quantum safe. Not someday, but today itself. So let's get started. I hand it over to Nitish to take you forward.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Amol. A warm welcome to everyone to Quantum Cybersecurity webinar, Securing the Future Beyond AI. Now, we understand that this is one of the major technology boom that has come up from last 5 years or 3 years per se. And we understand this is a problem with a lot of customers as well in understanding the time frame, how and when to start, and how to start as well, right? So that's the reason we are doing this webinar, to understand the timelines. What is quantum computing in the first place, right? How the quantum physics, which talks about the electrons, protons, and neutrons, are being translated to the bits, which is zeros and ones, which our computer today understand it, right? That we need to understand it, how quantum is getting translated to today's computer language, which is zeros and ones, right? So we'll talk about that as well. To set you the context of today's webinar, let me walk you through the agenda that we're going to cover today, right? The first thing is on the quantum computing, like I said. We'll also talk about the harvest now, decrypt later. There are interchangeable names as store now, decrypt later attacks. We'll also talk about the quantum day, right? Or the quantum year, which was previous 2025. We were calling it as quantum year. And we'll talk about the impacts on specific industries that is covering most of us, right? Which is finance, healthcare, utility, e-commerce. Now, as a user, as an administrator, as an organization, you are being impacted, right? We'll talk about the challenges, also the solution landscape, how and when you need to adopt them, and what is the timeline for it, right? And also the flexibility to adopt. Because the concern is that because you have a legacy data center, firewalls per se, or servers, switches, or routers, which does not understand post-quantum cryptography, right? Now, your concern is how we do the shift to the post-quantum era, because you might need to upgrade it, you need to buy new stuff, and the procurement or the solution to adopt these will take some time. So what is your planning looks like in terms of the adoption for post-quantum? Then we'll shift our gears on Fortinet's solution, which we are calling it as Quantum Safe Portfolio, wherein we talk about the FortiOS, which is our fuel in the product line that we have, right? Which is the operating system. We have natively integrated the post-quantum cryptography because, like I said, the challenge is the adoption is one of the challenges, right? We are making it easier for customers to adopt it from day zero, right, to your day end. And then you already are aware of the FortiGates, be it your VM form factor or the on-prem form factor or physical form factor, all have these capabilities, right? Now we have taken a step, as in we know that the customers would be taking certain time to adopt. That's the reason we have natively integrated with the FortiOS, and we understand the simple upgrade to a FortiOS version will make that magic happen in your environment, right? Now, for certain customers who are looking into highest quality of keys, putting everything in terms of their on-prem data centers, or they are more into the AI sovereignty compliances, right? For them, we also have the integration with the quantum key distribution, which creates the highest quality of keys, which are dependent on the post-quantum cryptographies again, can be integrated with our FortiGates, which then do your quantum safe terms like VPN, your remote access VPN, or decrypt those PQCs, or even do the translation from your non-PQC to PQC traffic. Then we'll talk about the performance and interoperability. Now, whenever you hear about a change in the key size or a newer technology as a whole, which is post-quantum cryptography now, and you understand this is a sophisticated technology, right? And you know that the performance would be impacted. Now, what if I say you that if you turn on the services or the PQC services on the FortiOS, there is no performance impact at all, right? If you compare with any other vendors, the story is different at all, right? We'll cover that in more details when we talk about those slides. Then on the last but not the least, we'll talk about the real world use cases, right? We need to see that where are we implementing these? Why QKD is making sense, right? There are caveats that you must have heard about QKDs as well. That it depends on proton, and protons can be translated or transmitted onto the cables, which can be extended only up to 150 kilometers. But there are vendors in-house in India which are working on 500 kilometers and even 2000 kilometers for defense customers, right? So we know that the evolution is happening along the line as we speak, and we'll also talk about the OT security. Now, OT with quantum is a very great use case that you need to see. I don't know if you have heard about this, but we'll make sure that you understand these use cases. All right. If that sounds good, I'll straight away go to what is quantum computing. Now, like I mentioned when I started my session, stating that any computer today, be it any technology you are running, they all talk in the bits, which is zeros and ones. Now, the challenge with the scientists and researchers were, how do we convert the electrons, protons, and neutrons, which were there in the quantum physics, to zeros and ones, which will actually understand it in the classical computers or the computers or technology that we have today, right? Because scientists and researchers also understand that this is a phase-wise approach, not a big bang approach. You need to take a phase-wise approach wherein you need to adopt fast, react fast, and then turn on the features on the whole infrastructure. That we'll talk in the planning as well, right? So if you have learned physics in your class 10, 12th, you must have heard about the force called centrifugal force. And you also know that in an environment, the electrons, protons, and neutrons travel randomly. So when you have a force, when it pulls to a cell, a circular motion is formed, right? Now, when a circular motion is forming, what the scientists and researchers were doing is, whenever electrons, protons, and neutrons were going up the cycle, it was denoted as 1. And whenever it is going down, it was denoted as 0. So the job of translating the electrons, protons, and neutrons were done, zeros and ones, right? Now you would say that, okay, you just translated to zeros and ones. Now what is the advantage of using quantum computer? We talk about it has computational power, it has more speed, it has more resources per se, which can perform and up par any of the classical computers today or supercomputers today, right? The reason is, if you look at it, when the circular motion is happening at the mid of the circle, right, there could be two scenarios. It could be a 0 or either it could be a 1, right? In the classical bits, wherein it was just zeros and ones, here you can get the flavor of 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1. If you look at it, the number of bits for the same state is being multiplexed, right? That's the whole purpose of quantum computing becoming more powerful, right? Those are called as quantum bits or qubits. That's the reason we call it as quantum bits. So as long as you increase the number of qubits, the number of the quantum or the power of the quantum computer also increases. Now there are two terminology. I will not go in detail, but you can do a Google. That's your homework that you can do it after the session about the superposition and entanglement. Right? These are two interchangeable or the terms that we use in quantum computing. There are also algorithms like the Shor's algorithms as well as the Grover's algorithm, which actually came in 1996. It's a fun fact, right? It came in theory in 1996, the Shor's algorithm, which is targeting your asymmetric classical algorithms, right? Now, for the symmetric algorithm, there's another theory that came in 1998 called Grover's algorithm, right? So these things came in like 20, 30 years ago. Now the theory is being converted to practical, right? So it is practically available, quantum computer, or you might be hearing about surrogate quantum computers also, because we know that the adoption or to get the quantum computer or a chip in a computer that we have today will take certain time, because there are so many permutation combination and a maturity needs to be taken place. But what they're doing is that in place of the quantum computers, they are actually using surrogate quantum computers. They are using GPUs, TPUs, or even the NPUs in such a way that it gives you a feel like of quantum computer, right? That's the reason the timeline that you see for 2030, 2034 is actually now coming to 2029, 2028, right? As we speak. Because you have heard about Google, Microsoft, they came up with a palm-sized quantum computer. So things are happening in the lightning speed in terms of the evolution. We imagine 100 years ago, 50 years ago, that for connecting to one person to another, there used to be an operator in the telephone operating department, which used to actually multiplex the calls from one source to destination. Now we have a palm-sized mobile phone, tablets, watches that receive calls, right? So the technology is evolving. Similarly, it will evolve for quantum computer also. And we have seen various advantages of quantum in AI as well. The learning the data set, which is only possible in 3D, 5D, which can be possible in 13D, 12D as well, when the quantum computer servers and learning will come into picture, right? So this is what the quantum computing all about in very brief, right? Now, what is the quantum challenge? Now we understood the advantages in the last slide, that the speed is there, it is multiplexing it, and we can do a lot of processing with quantum computers. But if you put the adversaries or the actors who might take advantages of these technology as well, which means that they can use sophisticated attack using quantum computers, or even they can use post-quantum cryptographies by encapsulating a malware, meaning that they have a malware, they encapsulate a malware with a post-quantum cryptography. Now, because your firewall, edge, core firewall, does not have a visibility on the post-quantum cryptography, they will take it as a standard TLS and SSL connection, right? And it will pass through because it will just see the 5 tuples or maybe thread inspection and all. But thread inspection is not able to understand your PQC based traffic. It is taking or treating it as HTTPS, right? That's when the attackers are one step ahead, right? So we need to have solutions which can decrypt it, which can have visibility, because in short, in cybersecurity, if you don't have visibility, you cannot apply security. That's simple as that, right? Coming to another theory that you must be hearing or you haven't heard about it, but it's called Mosca. Now, what is it, right? It's X plus Y greater than Z. Now, X is your data that you want to store. For how many years you want to store is the Y terminology, and Z is the D date, which is 2030 or 2034, if you have adopted any of the compliance from NIST or Quantum National Mission and all those stuff, right? So Z is the number when the Q date will happen. X is your data duration that you want to save those data, and Y is the number of years that you want to save those data. So if X plus Y is less than Z, then you don't have a problem, right? If X plus Y is greater than Z, meaning that you would take 2038 to safeguard your data and you need this data up to 2034, then you are already done with the quantum attacks. We'll talk about it. The threats are harvest not decrypt later, which Amol also touched upon it, right? Now, as the name suggests, we are harvesting. The adversaries or the attackers are harvesting. Now, the best part for an adversaries or an attacker is they don't need a quantum computer. I am just capturing data, intercepting as a man in the middle over the internet, maybe from your banking website to the bank's web, the servers. I'm just doing a man in the middle and capturing just encrypted data. And the best part again for the attacker is there's no way that the bank and the user would know that somebody is intercepting my data. Now you would say that it's an encrypted data. What is the problem with that, right? That's when the quantum computer and surrogate quantum computers into the play. They can actually do permutation, combination, looking at your public key and understanding based on the public key, they can get your private keys, meaning that they will be in clear text. So as I was mentioning, the data that you have identified, what is the number of duration of years that you want to keep this data isolated? Nobody should see it. For an example, your roadmap of next 5 years or 10 years per se, which nobody or no other vendors or no other country should look at it, right? Because there would be a reputational concern, right? Or there would be a problem if it comes out. So that's the reason this Mosca theory and harvest not decrypt later is one of the dangerous attacks. I talked about the encapsulation. That's another attack that's happening, right? There are experimental post-quantum cryptographies, right, which are being used in the environment or in the infrastructure. And the fun part is the HTTPS traffic that you see on the internet, 52% and more as of December 2025. You've seen 52% of the HTTPS traffic is based on the post-quantum cryptography. So ask question to yourself. You were imagining that is it being used entirely or nobody's using post-quantum cryptography? It is already being using it, it's 52% and more, right? And the total number of HTTPS traffic over the internet would be 95%. It is already 52%, reaching 60% in next couple of months. So we know that the post-quantum cryptographies are being adopted by browsers, by SaaS applications, by vendors like Amazon, Flipkart, and what other companies, right? So we understand the important, and that's the reason the adoption is also booming, right? Now, everything that you're using, now let me take a step back, right? Everything that you're using today are all based on some encryption. And those encryptions are based on your classical algorithm, be it asymmetric, be it symmetric. Now, what we are saying is that they are all at risk. Now, you imagine from a person logging in with his card to authenticating it to their critical websites, to their critical databases, everything at stake. Accessing emails, accessing cloud database, wherein you are creating a land zone or landing zone per se, and then you are creating or onboarding users in the MSSP format maybe. Everything is at stake. Your VPNs, your remote access VPN, everything is at stake. Code signing. You are delivering certain patches to your users. Now, I am sitting in man in the middle, get hold of these with surrogate quantum computer. I induce a malware. The user is understanding that it is coming from a legitimate source. I will simply download it. What is happening is a fileless malware is being introduced, or certain commands have been has been on your laptop or desktop or your services, and a backdoor has opened up, which you have no idea about, right? And when you understand there is a backdoor, it's already too late, right? And there would be dynamic DNS kind of attacks that could gonna happen with the bots that would be created in your environment, right? So this slides talk about the users, infrastructure, application or data. Everything is at stake if you're using the classical algorithm. With the power, with the computational speed, the quantum computers will be able to break those, right? And the best part is we are here, Fortinet is here to help you to secure your entire estate, right? We'll talk about it. Now, like I said, we have verticals. As a user, you are using some bank website. As an administrator, you are managing certain data centers or databases, right? Or websites. Or as an organization, you're maintaining the bunch of users or bunch of administrators or bunch of customers per se. All are impacted in any of the verticals that you look at. PII information in the medical records, right? You are putting your credit card information in the e-commerce because you want to buy some refrigerators, right? In the sale that's going to happen. Utilities, the grid that you have, there is a power outage, uncertainty. Nobody was planning for it, right? All have been encrypted today with classical algorithms. Innovations, the IP that is working or the patents that you are doing, right? Which should not be shared to anybody because it's a patent idea per se, right? You are securing it in some way, a company's patents per se. Everything is at stake. So if you imagine any of the verticals, if you imagine any of the classical algorithms that they're using or you are using, are all at stake, right? Now, quantum challenges or implementation challenges, we talked about it when I was initially pitching it, the idea. We know that the people needs to be trained, right? There would be certain budget or budget planning that you need to do. And you don't know how to educate your procurement team also, right? That whenever a BOQ or a bill of material or bill of quantity is created, it should have a vertical or a terminology which talks about the quantum cryptographies, right? So we understand that challenges and quantum expertise. Now you've already taken us to 2 steps ahead, right? But how would you know that you are at the right path? So you would need or want to hire certain quantum expertise that will actually tell you that you are at the right speed and the right path to take the quantum safe journey, right? Now, the last challenge that most of you are facing and you are not realizing it also, which is the legacy infrastructure. Like I said, your routers, switches, your F5 load balancer, or any load balancers per se, right, are all based on classical algorithm. Now, to upgrade them, you have to upgrade the box completely because there is no way that you can upgrade on the software and then get the flexibility to adopt, because you know that quantum cryptographies are heavier on the side, right? You would need different technologies. You would need quantum aware chipsets. You would need quantum aware servers, right? Then only you will do that upgradation. So you need to buy those items and then do the cryptography migration from classical to post-quantum, which we understand would be long years ahead, right? Now, if we go back to the Mosca theory, you have data that you need for 5 years, but to do the migration, you need 10 years, which is 15 years. And you're putting Z or the Z as the 2034, you're already late, right? That's when Palo Alto Networks and vendors like Fortinet comes into picture, or any other vendors are coming into the picture. But we'll talk about the advantages that we have with any other vendors out there. So the solution that we are providing you is the quantum key distribution, right? Now, there are vendors who only support a few of the vendors. We have 4 and plus QKD providers that you can integrate with the FortiGate services and FortiGate firewalls, right? Which you can then leverage to create the side-to-side VPN, which is based on the highest quality of quantum keys. PQCs, now you are saying that I don't want to buy or purchase additional hardware called as quantum key distribution. I want to use the FortiGate's natively integrated post-quantum cryptography. The answer is yes, you can utilize that as well. Meaning that you can leverage the post-quantum cryptographies base quantum safe VPNs to create side-to-side VPN from one pair to the other pair. You can also onboard your remote users, which are using FortiClient, to connect to the FortiGates using the post-quantum cryptography. Now, if somebody is doing man-in-the-middle attack and they have the surrogate quantum computers or quantum computers, they will not be able to break it because there is no characters or no prime numbers dependent on the post-quantum cryptographies. That's the beauty of PQCs, right? Now, the AES and symmetric encryption, like I said, you can do the translation from non-PQC to PQC and vice versa also. We'll talk about it. You can also decrypt the post-quantum because I talked about that 52% and more HTTPS-based traffic are being used over the post-quantum cryptography. So we already know that the quantum-based traffic is coming in your environment. Now, to inspect those, you need decryption capabilities, right? That's when the FortiGate solutions come into the picture, right? Now, we talk about this timeline. We have actually started our journey with quantum or post-quantum practices back in 2018. We have done evolutions, we have done the patents on the post-quantum cryptographies and started, and now we are sitting at March 2026, wherein we have the capabilities such as the decryption over the post-quantum cryptography. You can create side-to-side VPN. You can create remote access VPN based on post-quantum cryptography. You can access Fortinet's firewalls over the post-quantum cryptographies because the SSH is also, if you're using classical, they can be hampered with quantum speed. Now, if the attacker have attacked the firewall, then you are done and dusted, right? So to counter that or to prevent those kind of attack, you can actually use, if your browser is ready with post-quantum cryptography, you can access the GUI or the graphical user interface using the post-quantum cryptographies. Or even if you have PuTTY or SSH terminal that supports the post-quantum cryptography, you can do the SSH based on PQC as well, right? These are all natively integrated with our FortiOS, which means that the performance impact is minimal that I will talk in the slide anyways. But this gives you an advantages, right? So imagine that you don't have to upgrade any of the routers, which is the legacy infrastructure. You just upgrade your firewalls with a FortiOS that supports the post-quantum cryptography, and you can actually take your own time to do the migration from classical to post-quantum because all the threats have been eliminated on the FortiGate firewall altogether, right? Now, why Fortinet? Like I mentioned multiple times that we want our customer to act first and act fast, right? So we have integrated them in the FortiOS natively, which means that in a click of a button, you just enable the post-quantum cryptographies and nothing is needed from the customer end, right? Standard offering, meaning that there is no charge from Fortinet if you utilize the post-quantum cryptography. You just need to upgrade the FortiOS to certain version, right? And if you're using a legacy or an E version or D version of the FortiGate firewall, we would recommend you connect to the sales engineers that will help you size the box accordingly because we want our customer to have the highest return on investment. not only quantum, but also AI. We are seeing in the terminologies like quantum AI or the AI optimization for quantum, right? Those sort of things. So I don't want customers in next 2 years to sit in a position that you would be replacing or refreshing the boxes again. So connect to FortiGate's SE or the sales engineers to learn more and get insights on what the sizing or what the box should look like in your environment, right? We have taken the step in the hybrid migration. Now, what is hybrid migration or deployment per se? Now, because your administrators are ready and understanding the classical based site-to-site VPNs, right? You can leverage the same site-to-site VPN, just turning on the post-quantum cryptography. So we are not creating quantum or VPNs based on certain or a different algorithm or different ways to configure it, for which you would need a separate training. That will again put you in a step back, meaning that it will take certain time to train those administrators to learn the post-quantum based site-to-site VPN and then perform those migrations, right? We don't want that to happen for customers. We want you to leverage the classical site-to-site VPN, just turn on the PQC or the post-quantum cryptography on top of it, giving you the hybrid migration efforts, right? Now, your concern would be that I've turned on the highest level of classical algorithm. I'm putting a post-quantum cryptography on top of it. My performance is bound to go down and gonna degrade. The answer is no. I will talk about the performance testing that we have done and will show you the result as well, right? So that you understand that this is natively integrated. I'm talking about natively integrated performance became minimal to zero, that I will show you in a bit, right? Like I mentioned, that they are natively easy to configure. You just go to your site-to-site VPN, you enable it, you'll start seeing that there are options to enable post-quantum by a click of a button. You choose any of the NIST approved post-quantum cryptographies, be it FIPS 203, 204 or 205. We have all the cryptographies, right? Now, you have standardized Frodo as one of your internal PQCs per se. So you have that flexibility as well. If you have standardized MLChem or MLD lithium, those are also possible, right? So all of those, as per the NIST, the governance and the standardization body, we need to have those set of PQCs. Now, your answer would be, or your question would be that, why don't we allow the experimental PQCs or PQC that I can create and bring onto the table and integrate it with Fortinet or FortiOS? The answer, that is one of the biggest risks, because the maturity with post-quantum cryptography is not yet reached, meaning that there are not enough users to call these or the experimental PQCs as standardized, or they are mature enough to not have any vulnerabilities. If there are no governing bodies, then you are at a higher risk of calling attacker to attack you, because there would be vulnerabilities that you would not be aware of, right? Or any governing body would be aware of, because it's an open standard. Then that will create a problem. With Meteos and with the GPT cyber coming into the picture, the ball game gonna change for cybersecurity, right? So, like I said, interoperability with the NIST standard offering. If you are as you want to be as per the NSA standards governing body for all of these, you have these many options that you can choose from, right? So you can interchange it accordingly during your years of adoption as well. For example, you want to use Bike L1 for few years, and now you are upgrading, or you want to use the MLChem 512. You can choose that by changing the keys altogether. It's simple as that, right? So when I was mentioning the crypto agility piece, the hybrid mode, which was nothing but you can mix the DeFi elements that you are aware of and you are being trained off from like n number of times, right? Or n numbers of years. You can just turn on over these with the post-quantum cryptography, right? Now, there are also another challenge that customer face, and I don't know if you are also facing it, but I want to put that challenge as well. Meaning that if you want to do a upgrade from your legacy TLS 1.1 to 1.2, you have to upgrade the whole infrastructure to have the end-to-end TLS 1.2 encryption, right? You must have done that already, wherein you have to upgrade all the switches, routers, load balancers, your firewalls, your application servers, databases, and everything, which must have taken you a longer time, right? With post-quantum cryptography, with crypto agility functionality, you can actually mix and match any of the PQCs. Meaning that if one of the end is the MLChem and the other end is Frodo, for an example, they will still be able to create the post-quantum cryptography, right? That's the beauty of PQCs, the crypto agility, right? Like I mentioned, you have both the options. You can utilize the post-quantum cryptography, which is natively included on the FortiGates or the FortiOS, or you can bring any of the vendors such as Toshiba, IDQ, and whatnot, which we have integration with. We have the tech docs available, which all QKDs we support. You can buy those QKDs and integrate it with our firewalls to use those keys that have been generated from QKD to set up your side-to-side VPN based on post-quantum cryptography, right? So all of these options are available, be it defense, be it vertical, any vertical, you can utilize them, right? Now, save web browsing that I was mentioning, that your browser is already ready. There are two scenarios. Your web browser is already ready with post-quantum cryptography. Now you are encapsulating the encryption with PQCs. Now, like I mentioned in earlier also, that if your firewall is not aware, then it will understand it is a normal TLS and SSL connection, which will be a problem for the administrator or the organization, right? Because there might be a malware induced inside a PQC. So you need a visibility or deep inspection that can see inside the post-quantum based traffic, right? That is what is available. Now, the second scenario is, let's suppose a user is trying to access from a web browser which is already ready with post-quantum, trying to access a database or a application server which is still based on classical algorithm. Now, directly from the post-quantum to the classical based server, the encapsulation will not happen, right? What will happen is that the application server will tell the initiator or ask the initiator to downgrade it to the version that he is supporting or the server is supporting, right? That you don't want to happen. You want to adopt the post-quantum cryptography phase by phase, wherein whatever the easier way and the fastest way to adopt can be turned on faster, can be turned on quickly. So browser, you have turned on the PQCs per se for the users, which can access n number of things and can also access the classical base. You can actually translate the PQC traffic to non-PQC traffic and vice versa as well. From the if a browser or if a user is sitting inside using a classical algorithm and trying to access a SaaS application which is based on post-quantum cryptography, our firewall, FortiGates firewall, will do the translation for you from the classical to PQC or PQC to classical. So again, giving you another advantage is that you will take sweet time to migrate to post-quantum cryptographies by buying and upgrading it and then doing the migration. We understand that's going to take a lot of time, but at the edge or at the core, you can put a FortiGate firewall can do that magic for you, right? Now, the use cases part, quantum for OT. Now, you know that OT comes up with n number of visibilities issue, right? If, like I mentioned earlier also, that if you don't have visibility, you cannot provide security. As simple as that, right? So any of the monitoring equipment, any of the OT devices, be it your medical, enterprise, or any of the devices, IT, OT environment, connecting to an application that is already based on post-quantum cryptography, right? Our FortiGate, like I mentioned, can translate any of the non-PQC to PQC and vice versa as well. So it only not help you with the safe browsing practices, but also technologies like OT, which will take ages to upgrade, right? Because they are using certain legacy operating system and you cannot upgrade them because you know that if you turn off an OT device, there will be a disruption in the environment. How would you turn off the power grids, right? That's one of the challenges with the customers. Now, to cater that and use the FortiGate to the advantages, you can use FortiGate firewall to translate it to the post-quantum based traffics, right? And vice versa. Now, let's come to the performance. Now, we talked about it, how to configure it, what were the challenges with post-quantum, what the attackers going to use it up against their advantages, like the harvest not decrypt later attacks. We talked about the translation. We talked about the decryption capabilities. We also talked about that you can use them to access the firewalls in SSH or GUI access based on post-quantum cryptographies, right? We have seen a lot of them, right? Now the concern is that if I turn out everything, will my performance be impacted, right? That's the beauty of our NP7, the Network Processor 7 version, right? The NP7 ensures that there is no impact on the throughput by offloading them on the NP7, right? So if you have already purchased, if you're planning to purchase, make sure that you talk to your SEs or the sales engineers about the NP7 functionalities, because you have to onboard post-quantum cryptography and AI in the future, or you are already onboarding it, or you have already purchased GPUs, or you have certain interference wherein you have already have the pre-trained data that you are utilizing it to train your LLMs or any private LLMs. You need to have these in your environment, right? Which will have minimal impact when you are adopting a newer technology, right? So the results, simple as that. We turn on the Diffie-Hellman, the legacy Diffie-Hellmans, group 19, 20, 21. We also enabled the 520, the third version and the fifth versions of the MLCAM. We turn on all the PQCs, which is HQC, Byte, Frodo, which are based on lattice, some are based on hash, some are based on dilithium and all those stuff. But what we saw was when we enabled the MLCAM, which is our recommendation from Fortinet as well, that when you turn on the MLCAM, we see the similar impact of what the Diffie-Hellman or the classical algorithm used to give, right? Which means that the recommendation, the NP7, another recommendation, if you're turning on your site-to-site VPN, we recommend you to use MLCAM. Not just that you would be you cannot enable the other ones. You can enable it. It's just that when you are turning on the phase one tunnel of the site-to-site VPN, you'll see a minimal impact on the CPU utilization of the firewall, but it will come down once the tunnel is established, right? The second scenario which I talked about is applying to all the vendors that are out there. Any vendor that talk about quantum safe VPN has this problem. But because we use our A6 or the NP7 to our advantages, we have seen this with MLCAM. With any other vendor with MLCAM also, they see a huge impact when they enable a single site-to-site VPN, and they see 30%, 40% of the increment in the CPU utilization. So when you are talking about thousands of CPU, your firewall will go down at all, right? So you have to be aware of the performance impact and the advantages that FortiGate or the Fortinet product brings onto the table. So talk to your sales guys and talk about these functionalities and see how you can start the next step as well. Right? Now the QKD use case, we had done the testing with the IDQs where we integrated the IDQ QKD with the FortiGates, right? There were data centers from one end to the other end, which was 46 kilometers apart, and we have chosen Singapore, which makes a lot of sense because everything is closer to them, and it has the perfect use case for QKD usage, right? And we use our FortiTester to do the testing on the PQC-based traffic, right? And then we did the end-to-end PQC. Now we are the only vendor who does the combination. Now other vendors can choose only PQC or only QKD. You can actually combine to have a military-grade encryption in your environment, meaning that just by turning the PQC plus the QKD, meaning that the quantum key that you have received from QKD, on top of it, you have a PQC on the MLCAM. Without any impact, you can create a military-grade site-to-site VPNs. So if you have a super critical environments or databases, data centers or DCDR setup wherein you have that concern, you can create these set of quantum safe VPNs, right? Or even you have on-prem to cloud connectivity. You put a FortiGate VM, you put an on-prem firewall and create a site-to-site VPN. Done and dusted. So any user who is trying to reach your on-prem and then trying to access the cloud workloads can be done through those quantum safe VPN as well. Right? Now, I think you must have heard about this, or you have already had this thought, or you had the thought while I was giving this session, right? That what is the risk? We talked about that the verticals were all impacted because the quantum power and speed can, what it can bring onto the table. So if your data need to stay confidential, right? You need to act now. You are already late in the game. You have to talk to your leadership. You talk to the to your procurement team, or if you are leaders, you talk to your IT team to fastly adopt it with FortiGate firewalls and Fortinet product lines. The SD-WAN, our SD-WAN solution also supports post-quantum cryptographies, right? So if you have these SD-WAN tunnels, or you're planning to adopt or planning to have SD-WAN in your environment, give a thought to FortiGates as well. We set up the SD-WANs based on the PQC as well, right? Now, the other questions or the thoughts that can ponder is the too early. Is the harvest now defibrillator is actually happening now, right? Just put a Google search or a Gemini search or any of the Gen AI or LLM search. Put that, is there any HNDL attack that is happening, or are there any articles around it? You'll see 1,000+ of articles that the customers organization have seen. By changing just the BGP routes, they can actually redirect it to their own databases where they will capture the encrypted data, right? Without the customer knowing it. They might know after some time that the latency has come in, but if you have an edge location which is in your region, you will not have that concern also. You will never have that visibility. If you have app accelerators, which is actually buffering some data, you will never know that there is some capturing happening within the environment, right? It is a dangerous attack wherein you need to act now, right? There are compliances that are coming that I will also show in the next slide. Future proofing. Is your infrastructure being evaluated for post-quantum readiness, right? Now you are doing the evaluation to adopt the post-quantum cryptography, but the attacks are happening now. Harvest now defibrillator, encapsulation, malwares, remote access VPNs are being intercepted, your site-to-site VPN being intercepted. What is the solution? The solution is FortiGate, right? Fortinet's product line. You enable the PQCs without any cost, without any performance impact, and turn on the site-to-site VPN based on PQCs, remote access VPNs on PQCs, decryption on PQCs, your SSL, SSL connection PQCs, translating the non-PQC to PQC or vice versa, all are possible in the same firewall, right? And the best part, is it too costly? Like I said, no costing, but there are vendors who are charging for quantum subscriptions. We want our customer to stay ahead, not having any caveat or a back problem such as the costing, right? So you have the firewalls, latest firewalls, give it a thought to enable it or do the testing POCs, or by the other which has the NP7 capabilities if you are looking for a tech refresh. So call to action for all of you, schedule a quantum risk assessment with Fortinet sales guys. Let them know that you are interested onto it. Have your questions to them, then we can prepare POCs with you and then take it forward, or you can just turn it on, do the POC, because it's simple as it is, right? It is natively integrated onto the FortiOS. You can test it out with few site to sites and just see the power of the FortiGate. Right? So now this is the sector comparison at a glance, right? How ready the quantum in India is it, right? Be it your BFSI, the banking and finance, public sector or large enterprises. How are you placing and what all compliances you should look at, right? Top threats for the BFSI, harvest now, decrypt later, as you're aware. Any swift UPIs or CBS payments that flows, if somebody is intercepting it, somebody is just doing the capturing of those encrypted data, that is one of the biggest threat. Key regulators, RBI, SEBI, DPDP Act, that is famous, is a buzzword happening. Phase 1 action is crypto inventory, which means that the crypto bill of material, meaning that you should know that what all cryptographies that is going inside your environment, right? And which all cryptographies needs to be migrated to post-quantum first, right? Our Fortinet fit, you need to talk about the hybrid PQC VPN with our Forti Manager Readiness View, right? The full PQC target for the BFSI customers is the 2029 and 30, because the data is everything for the BFSI, right? It's true for all, but it is more critical for the BFSI. Public sector, the nationwide intercept of the sovereign incomes and Aadhaar card is the top threat. Not only that, there are nation-led attacks that is happening from other countries to our country, which will lose our reputations in the reputation globally as well. So those are the concerns that are coming up as top threats. Key regulators like the CERT-in, DRDO, National Quantum Mission, which has just planned to spending around 6,000 plus crores on the quantum initiatives, right? That's the reason you must have heard about Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka becoming the quantum states, right? The phase 1 action for these guys are discovery across the NIC, which is the governing body for the connectivity part and the governance part, the DigiLocker, OT and ICS, right? Your OT environment, the control systems that you have, or the SCADA system that you have. The fit from Fortinet is the QKD integration with FortiGates and create the side-to-side VPN. You also saw the OT PQC translation from non-PQC or the classical to PQC and vice versa, right? The full target is around 2030-31. We are already late. We are sitting at 2026. For the large enterprise, the top threats are DC interconnects or the connectivity from on-prem to data centers or your on-prem to cloud environment, or even now the third threat is coming in, right? From your on-prem or legacy data center or cloud to AI factories or AI data centers, right? So for that also you need to have these security, because if you are training training your LLM with the data sets, right? And if the attackers are poisoning those LLM models, then you will never be able to do or achieve what you are trying to achieve with that LLM. The fine tuning will take n numbers of years. Your data that you have been putting on the LLMs will be at stake, right? So the data poisoning, the data thefts, the data leakage kind of attacks will be on the rise, right? Key regulators for it, DPDP, that you already aware, SEBI, NIST, EUs, if you are the GCCs, you have companies or branches here in India, you are all at stake because you would be connecting any way, which ways to your NAM, to EMEA, DCs or the services. Phase 1 action is DC interconnects, cloud gateway, crypto scan, and now the AI factory and AI data centers. Fortinet's fit is you use our intelligent FortiGate SD-WAN with PQC and quantum readiness view, which is available on the Forti managers and the QKD integrations, right? And the full PQC target for the large enterprise is looking at 2028 and 30, right? So the last slide that I have for today is that Fortinet is quantum ready. We are aware of the challenges that customers are facing. That's the reason we have a number of features so that you can adopt first and adopt fast, right? You can protect your data today with the harvest now, decrypt later, or store now, decrypt later kind of attacks. You have interoperability, meaning that you can enable your classical VPNs and have the PQCs on top of it without any performance impact. You can do the translation from the non-PQC to PQC and vice versa. You can secure your firewall using post-quantum cryptographies. You can do the decryption on the post-quantum based traffics, giving you the end-to-end in-depth protection against quantum threats. This is not just looking at the current threats that we're talking about. It is also talking about the futuristic threats that we have not anticipated at all, right? The encapsulation of the PQCs with malwares or fileless malwares, right? And the transition is easy. Talk to us, talk to the sales engineers, the sales managers, and let us do the job for you. And what is the best that we can do it for you? Please connect to our sales guys, right? That's all I had. I will now go to the chats if there are any. Stop sharing it. Let me see the chats. Okay, I see a lot of questions here. Okay, how can we get a Fortinet certificate? Where can we learn? Right. So the learning is that we have a number of YouTube videos on our Fortinet channel. So please leverage that. We have the documentation that are available that you can actually summarize it with any of the GenAI application that if you are using it any to ask and learn more about the quantum offering from Fortinet, right? And then you can learn in that way as well. And you can educate others as well, right? Because this is not a single or an isolated effort to go to quantum era. It's a team effort that you need to put in, right? Why is government policy important in quantum cryptography? Now, like I mentioned, I talked about it, right? There should be a governing body, right? That should help you with the right path. Now, if you have adopted anything or everything, you don't know where you're going with, right? If there are any vulnerabilities or unseen or unknown vulnerabilities that you have not anticipated, then that would be a problem, right? So that's the reason the government policies are important as well as the governing bodies or the compliance bodies like NIST is possible and it's mandatory. So we talked about the QKD use cases, right? So quantum key distribution, if you don't want to use the PQCs which are on your FortiGate firewalls and you want to have the highest quality of keys from a third-party source, right, which is QKD, you can integrate them with the firewalls and we can leverage the same keys to create the side-to-side VPN. Now the problem with that is the keys that you have created, it needs to be delivered to FortiGate, right? And the FortiGate will use that keys to the other pair. Now the same key has to be transferred to the second pair as well, right? Because you need to have the same set of pair. Now maintaining those keys would be a challenge for customers in the long run. If you have 10,000 VPNs, you would not be creating 10,000 of keys. That's the reason Fortinet has the PQC integration, right? So I think in the interest of time, we are already 2 minutes ahead. What I will do is I will gather these questions. I will answer them on the Excel sheet and maybe I'll share with you guys, right? And like I said, thank you so much for your time today and really appreciate your time today and hope to have more conversation around post-quantum cryptographies. Do reach out to your sales engineers and sales managers and talk about how to start with post-quantum cryptographies. In that note, thank you so much. I hope to see you on the field and please reach out to us, like I said, and we'll see how we can help you with quantum era. Well, thank you so much, guys. Have a good one.